Everyone to the Oregon Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, January 24th, 2023 meeting. Happy New Year to everyone. We're meeting virtually today, and to kick off our agenda, I just want to say thanks for being here. Welcome. Jessica is showing some of the Zoom features on the screen if you're not familiar with how to navigate those different functions. And we're about to move into public comment after this initial welcome and introduction. So this code of conduct relates to that public comment agenda item. So OBPAC is committed to diversity, inclusion, civility, and respect. Committee members and members of the public who are providing public comment are expected to be respectful and maintain civility by avoiding foul, obscene, hateful, racially or ethnically derogatory language that creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment. So welcome everyone. We'll go around and do brief introductions of committee members. I am Emma Newman. I am the co-chair of OBPAC, and I am located in Springfield, Oregon. Glad to be joining all of you today, and I'll pass it to Mavis.
Hi, I am Mavis Hartz. I am your other co-chair. So we get to tag team this, and I get to watch the clock, and she gets to tell you all the interesting things. So let's go ahead and introduce everyone. Aaron, you're up next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron. I am the under 21 chair here on OBPAC. I am currently my fourth year at Oregon State University, studying civil engineering, and I'm originally from Southern Oregon, down there by Phoenix, but I'm currently living in Corvallis. So I'll pass it to Beth.
Hi, everyone. I am the regular member, and I represent local jurisdictions and planning. And I am calling from Newport.
I'll pop in. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Andre Lightsey Walker, use he, him pronouns. I'm based in Portland, Oregon. I work for a nonprofit called the Street Trust in my day job, and I am an at-large member. So I'll pass it on to Lauren.
Good afternoon. I'm Lauren Morris. I live and work in Coos Bay, Oregon. I work for the Coquille Indian tribe, and I am the tribal representative for this committee. How about Bill?
Thank you. I'm Bill Richard, relatively new member to OBPAC. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting because I was having knee surgery on that day. Knee replacement surgery, which was caused by, what else? A bicycle accident. I'm recovering fine and going to have a little adjustment to the surgery on February 7th. I'm 76 years old. I think I represent the older community. And I will pass it on to Karen.
I think let's do Dell, and then we'll go to staff after that. So Dell, go ahead and introduce yourself. Thanks, Bill.
So Bill's 76, I'm 77. I beat you by 1 year. I'm fairly new to this committee too. I was at the last meeting. And, I live in Milwaukee, Oregon. I work in Beaverton, Oregon. I'm an avid bicycle commuter and ride about 8,000 or 9,000 miles a year. And I'm a longtime member of the Clackamas County Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee, and also a member of ORTAC, the Oregon Trails Advisory Committee.
Thanks, Dell. So now we'll pass it on to staff. We'll do Jessica, Karen, and then if there's other staff who would like to present themselves now, go for it. If you're presenting later on the agenda, we can wait to do your introductions then.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jessica Horning. I'm ODOT's Pedestrian and Bicycle Program Manager and have the privilege of being the staffer for OBPAC.
And I'm Karen Criswell. I'm the Public Transportation Division Administrator, and the Public Transportation Division has all of ODOT's, well, not all, many of ODOT's bike, ped, safe routes to school, transit, and passenger rail programs within our division.
Thank you. I see Susan leading by example, putting her name and title in the chat. If there's other staff members and members of the community, just Oregonian people here to talk to us or observe our meeting, please go ahead and do a brief intro in the chat. Now is also a great time to either raise your virtual hand or indicate in the chat that you're interested in providing comment to us verbally as a committee. I think we had at least one person interested in public comment. Today's meeting goals are to provide feedback as a committee on the proposed active transportation rapid response program, to discuss progress on work plan tasks and revisit our work plan briefly, and to receive updates on ODOT grant programs. So that's where we're headed for the day. I will see if there's any raised hands. I'm not seeing any raised hands for public comments yet. I think I'm seeing anyone indicating in the chat either. Jessica, do you know if the individual who was planning to comment today is with us in the meeting?
I'm checking real quick and I am not seeing their name listed. So just for committee members' information, there was a letter that we received from a member of the public just before the meeting that I have included in the meeting packet on the drive. So maybe in the interest of time, since the person is not here to provide additional context and comment, revisit that during the NOAs at the end of the meeting. That.
Good, thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else with hands raised or indicating that they'd like to speak in the chat box. So last call for public comments. Or if you're on the phone, you can just unmute and verbally speak up. We don't want to miss you if you're calling in by phone either. Okay, with a adequately large, awkward silence, I think it's time to move on. We'll keep moving with our agenda to approving meeting minutes for the November meeting. There were a couple little notes in the document. I had requested a sentence or two more explaining the process for land acknowledgements. You did a great job last meeting, Jessica, explaining kind of in-person versus virtual. And so if you could just add that detail and a little bit more description there, I'd appreciate that. And then I wanted to confirm for the Safe Routes to School program, it said 20 to 30 programs recommended to the OTC. Was that programs, or would projects be a more accurate representation?
Yep, that is a typo that I will correct.
Any other amendments to our minutes from committee members? Can you hear me? My visual has frozen.
Yep, your video is frozen, but we can still hear you.
Okay, thanks for confirming, Jessica. Were there any other amendments that people are indicating visually that I can't see?
I am not seeing any. So if there's anyone who would like to make a motion to adopt the minutes, 1 second, with the proposed changes.
So move.
I'll
So
second.
we have a second. Andre. So motion to approve the minutes, the November 2022 minutes. on the table and approved for a vote by all of us. So all in favor, please say aye and or raise your virtual hand, even though I can't see that.
Aye.
I'm saying aye.
Aye.
It looks like it
Any
passes.
opposed? Please speak up now. Okay. Minutes pass unanimously, I believe. Mavis, I'm looking at you to confirm, since you can see the visual part of the meeting. That's frozen for me.
Yes, we have approved the minutes and are ready to go on to the division administrator updates.
Fantastic. Erin, it's all yours.
Good afternoon again, folks. I have just a few updates today. The first ones are staffing updates, which we have, we've had a few sad farewells. We've had some really great additions to the division that I'm super excited to see what they bring to the team and to the table. So we have a new public transportation climate specialist who started just a week ago. His name is Ryan Phillips. We have a new Safe Routes to School program manager, Zao Posadas, and she starts in another couple of weeks. She comes to us from the city of Portland, I believe, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I get any of this wrong. Susan's going to miss part of our meeting today because she'll be interviewing Region 4 transit coordinators, which is a really important position for us to fill to support transit providers in Central Oregon. We will be posting for a training coordinator position, and that position also provides support to our Public Transportation Advisory Committee. And I'm flagging some of the ones that are coming in case you or people you know are super smart people that would be perfect for any of these jobs. Just saying. We also have a new micromobility and first/last mile coordinator. Her name is Amanda Howell. I've seen just snippets of her resume, and she is super exciting. She was off presenting at TRB on her first week here. So really excited to see where she goes. We have a new passenger rail coordinator, Jill Eckenrode, and a new intercity network coordinator, the name of the person, which I guess they've been hired. I don't even know their name. So that is also exciting. And then we have some additional hires in the program services team, which is the administration of our grants. So those are really critical to us meeting our core functions as grant administrators. So one is a transit compliance coordinator. So that was a promotion for Young Cross-Laird, who you might remember, who helped support the committee fabulously when you had your in-person meeting in Portland last year. So it didn't take him long at all to promote from within. We have a new capital program coordinator, Joe Heberling, and a new STIF fund manager, Drew Orr. So those are a few of our staffing updates. The other thing that I want to flag for you is it was distributed, and I think, and I'm looking at Jessica because I think Jessica has already shared it with the committee, but it's a public transportation advisory committee, has a number of vacancies that they're looking to fill. They have been going through a committee membership and composition refresh, as well as freshening and, dare I say, sharpening their recruitment processes. I think they've learned quite a bit, I think, from the way that OBPAC does some of their recruitments and recommendations for committee members. Of particular potential interest for folks in this room, there's multiple seats, and many of these, it will be the first time PTAC has had these seats. You'll recall that we're trying to move towards the connectivity of the system, like safe walking and biking to transit stops, safe at the other end so folks can get where they want to go, not these isolated silos. So in recognition of that, one of the new positions is a multimodal bike share micromobility advocate to coordinate for coordination that increases access to transit through first and last mile connections, and including potentially micromobility providers. So that's, I think, one position that some of you or people that other smart people you know might be interested in. The other thing that is coming is PTAC would like to ask OBPAC if you are interested in sending a member or designating someone as a non-voting member liaison to PTAC, and I think part of their intent is to increase the communication and the shared understanding between the two committees. They are still trying to develop what it is that would be the roles, responsibilities of that liaison position. And so we'll probably be bringing it back to you next month, but we also wanted to take the time to hear from you because I know you all are being pulled many, many different ways these days with requests to serve on committees. But I think we just wanted to create some space in here from you, what you would like to see in that kind of role, or what you would hope to get from it, or if it's something that you think is useful and meaningful and that you might be interested in, either generally or specifically you as an individual. Is this thing on? Is my mic on? I'm not sure.
I think it's more that our fearless leader seems to have disappeared. So here we go.
Oh no, Emma, come back to us.
Hopefully she will. Do we have, so the PTAC, that is the Public Transportation Advisory Committee?
Yes.
Do we have anybody here that is just chomping at the bit or knows anybody that would be great in a role there?
And I think you don't have to decide today about the liaison role. We wanted to make sure that there's more definition around roles and responsibilities so that whoever raises his hand is very clear what they might be getting themselves into and can better assess whether it's a worthwhile use of your time. So, but again, we just wanted to raise the question here in terms of, as you think about that role, are there specific things that you would want us to take back to PTAC and say, we think it is really important that the liaison role, does this?
I sat in on a few PTAC meetings. I guess the most important thing is to make sure that our purpose here is heard by PTAC, since it is a public transportation committee. They might not focus as much on pedestrian and bicycle. So yeah, just making sure that we're heard and that we're represented in that forum.
Yes, I've noticed that we are getting invited to a lot of tables, which is fantastic. But we definitely want to be heard if we show up. So that is definitely really high on our priority list. Mm-hmm. Anybody else have anything to say about the PTAC?
Well, and we can make the invitation reciprocal. So if they can come and sit in our meetings as a guest as well.
That would be a great thing for us to extend our hands to that. Okay, Karen, it looks like you are next on my agenda. I know that you want some response from us on this. If you could shoot for being done with your presentation by 2, so that we would have 15 minutes to respond to you, since that's what you're really looking forward, that would be great. So the mic is yours.
Yes, give me just a moment, because there's actually 3 of us presenting on this agenda item today, and I just flagged Matt to let him know that we're starting. So to come on over to this virtual meeting. And he's on his way, which doesn't take long in a virtual environment. Okay. I get my other screen up. All right. I'll go ahead and get us started. So I've already introduced myself. Soon we'll be joined by Mac Lind, who is the division administrator for the Delivery and Operations division. And then we're also joined by Ken Schonkweiler, which some of you might know. Ken has been the project manager herding all of us cats or goats, whatever we are, on this project. I have such a way with words. This is why I'm not allowed to talk to some people publicly. And just to kind of start by getting oriented and set some context for what we've been doing. You all know, I don't need to tell you that we have seen a dramatic increase, and there's Mr. Mackland. We're just getting started, Mac. We've seen a dramatic increase in 2022 in pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries in Oregon over the past year plus. As a result of that increase in fatalities and some really attention grabbing fatalities, ODOT had decided to undertake kind of a two-pronged approach. The first was making some rapid improvements in investments in some specific multimodal corridors. They were corridors that rated at the top of our active transportation needs inventory in terms of crash risk factors, and also equity, among other factors. That work, and Mac will talk about that momentarily, what we've accomplished there was accomplished, was that 2022, Mac? You will tell us all. The other part of it, which is the part that's taken a bit longer, is that we had hired a consultant to do an evaluation of our various bike ped safety infrastructure projects to explore topics such as how are we doing in terms of data and being able to get data in place that we can use for effective decision making quickly. How are we doing that, and how do we compare to other DOTs, for example? How are we doing with having equity indicators baked into our funding criteria and our decision making, as well as other program suggestions and requirements for being able to deliver our bike ped safety improvement projects more quickly. So that's sort of the broader context of why we initiated that effort. We learned a lot, I think, from our peers around the United States. In some areas, we are definitely leading some of our companion DOTs in what we're doing. And in other areas, there are some opportunities for improvement that we're working on. So our goal today is to share what we did, what we learned, and then we are bringing forward to you for feedback. And that will be the main topic, I think, that we would probably like to spend the most time on, is a rapid improvement program concept. And this would be bringing some consistent rigor to how we respond to a certain subset of triggering pedestrian and bicycle fatalities, and how we are able to respond and get rapid improvements in place for those hot spots and in those areas. So that, just to kind of lay it out in terms of what we'll be covering. And then there are some specific questions, and Jessica, can I trouble you to put the questions that we'll be asking, because I want you to have those questions in mind as we're going through. So when we get to the end of the presentation, the two questions, and think about these as we're going along. Do you support ODOT in continuing to develop a rapid improvement program as we generally described it today? Is that something that OBPAC thinks is a good idea? And what suggestions do you have for further improvements, or what concerns or questions might you have? It's a lot to get brains around. I know we've struggled to really take it all in and try to figure out a really effective path forward. And so I'm looking forward to a really robust discussion. Okay, next, please. And Mac, take it away. Mac and Ken and I will be doing several handoffs through, so bear with us.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Just introduction, Macklin, Delivery and Operations Division Administrator for ODOT. So I have the benefit of serving the state in a variety of capacities, but I think for this group, all the 5 region managers report to me, as well as our maintenance and operations branch, our engineering and technical services branch with our chief engineer, and our statewide project delivery branch. So got the full suite of delivery and maintenance under my portfolio. And we're involved in a lot of stuff. And so I have the benefit of speaking to it a lot. This being a big push that we're making around how are we taking a look at safety with a different perspective, or at least recognizing that we've got some challenges that we're dealing with in the state. It's been a while since I've been in front of OBPAC. I was thinking about it this morning. I don't recognize many of the faces. Mavis, it's good to see you again. Emma as well. I was thinking back to many years ago. I was our active transportation section manager before we restructured and put bike fed programs under Karen, and certainly a lot of engagement with OBPAC back in the day. So it's nice to see all of you and being back in front of this group. I don't think it needs a long explanation, but we threw this slide in there. Just why are we putting so much effort into this topic right now, especially around pedestrian safety? And I think this screenshot on the left is preliminary data from last year. It hasn't been final QC'd, so the numbers may change. You'll recognize it was about 10 days before the end of the year was this last report. I'd highlight on the right-hand side of that graphic, while total fatalities and crashes are down about 4%, we see that pedestrian fatalities are up 44%. So that's the driver for this conversation. So it's I think generally good news that we're decreasing fatalities and crashes. There's still far too many, of course, but we're seeing this uptick in pedestrian crashes. So what can we be doing with the funding that we have to try to influence or affect that? We also know by some research that we've done in the agency that I'm sure OBPAC is aware of, just around the disproportionate impacts on low income and BIPOC populations when it comes to those pedestrian fatalities or severe injuries. So a renewed focus, if you will, based on all the work that we've been doing, but also what we're paying attention to over the last couple of years in this space. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. So that has been on our mind for a while. And I think part of that is, what do we know around the impacts that we're seeing, but then also what can we do in terms of affecting the infrastructure quickly or more rapidly? How can we produce some projects or improvements on the ground fast? In 2021, through direction from the Oregon Transportation Commission, we did this pilot program to infuse $10 million into several key corridors. Those corridors with maybe the biggest pedestrian safety and equity considerations in mind. What things could we go do to make some improvements over a 6 to 12 month time period? That funding, we'll talk about this throughout the course of this discussion, but that funding came from House Bill 2017, the large transportation funding package that was targeted to ODOT for safety. So it was a repurposing of those funds to consider what can we do in a fast manner. And my favorite one of these is always that bottom picture, which is adding illumination. I think that one might be from Springfield, if I'm not mistaken. Just some dramatic improvements around what lighting does in a corridor. But you can see from those other pictures, signs and lines, ADA curb ramps, of course, just what are we doing to help improve the pedestrian safety aspect in corridors? And largely these were those urban arterial type corridors, but that's not the only place that, of course, we were challenged with pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries. There's more information, of course, on all of these, but I just wanted to highlight it's kind of a pilot effort that the commission really was passionate about doing something, and then I think it helped inform what we're going to talk about here today. Next slide, please. So the big question is, how can we think about this differently? Our big federally funded programs certainly have a lot of requirements around how we have to pick projects that through our All Roads Transportation Program, our ARTS program, that is predominantly funded by federal dollars. And there are requirements and guidelines of how we have to use those dollars. We also know that we can't lean on our maintenance and operations funding for things that we would like to see in these corridors, because we also have a state highway fund budget reduction challenge going on. And so how do you balance all of those things with, we know that there are some safety improvements that can be made. How can we make them rapidly with what color of money? And then, of course, how are we taking those equity considerations in mind? So I'm going to turn it over to Ken, because I think everything that we've talked about up to this point was helping to inform, to Karen's point earlier, how do we get some smart people nationally around the table and help inform this in a different way moving forward? So I'm going to turn it over to Ken. He's going to highlight a bit of the work that he helped project manage and lead with our consultant team. And then we'll come back around to some of our thoughts around a concept for a program and potentially repurposing some funds. So Ken, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mac, and good to see everybody. So as Mac mentioned, our leadership at ODOT directed staff to manage a project where we would have a third-party evaluation of existing ODOT funding programs to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety in this lens, right? How can we do this fast? How can we do it effective? And how can we include equity within our programming process? And as Mac mentioned, we did this by learning from and focusing on best practices from other state DOTs, FHWA, and peer agency reviews of our own data practices and programming. Which leads me to talk a little bit about our DOT FHWA peer review sessions. So just a couple of the highlights that we learned through this peer review. As I mentioned, we spoke to these various state DOT agencies that have a reputation of being progressive when it comes to pedestrian and bicycle safety. We also spoke to FHWA and your very own Emma Newman, who participated in these two events that we conducted. So we engaged professionals from these agencies from a diverse background, such as division administrators, directors of policy and planning, transportation planners, traffic and safety engineers, and various others, pretty much to give us a wide perspective of how we can get at these goals within our own programs. So some of the key findings that we had from our DOT FHWA peer review sessions were summarized in these three focus areas on the left here. So we talked a lot about social equity in programming, rapid project delivery, and crash data. We found things that, as Karen mentioned, some things that we are doing extremely well as an agency and other things that we could make some improvements on. Social equity, for example, we're recognizing that not only us, but other DOTs in the country are all seeing this as an urgent priority with our project programming, but we're really getting started on how we wrap our minds around how we can best implement demographic data in project programming. As far as rapid project delivery is concerned, we all agreed very quickly on in the meetings that state funds were the funds that provide the most flexibility to get us at our goals. Unfortunately, many of our federal programs have certain stipulations, whether this be on how we program or what considerations we take within, say, our environmental or right-of-way perspective, that take a little bit more time. And we have a very well-developed process at ODOT that handles those funds. We learned that ODOT uses some of these tools that were discussed, such as safe systems approaches in our project programming and speed reduction programs. But we can be a little bit more strategic in how we do that, hence some of the recommendations from this evaluation. And last but not least, crash data. This is what many of our program managers rely on in the active transportation and safety related fields to start programming their projects. And we got a lot of great recommendations, and we're able to pull from other state DOTs to learn how we can get our timeline down more quickly to around less than 1 year, maybe even a month in the future, and take our current process, which is a little bit lengthy, to better implement data and recent data in our project program. So next, I do want to talk a little bit about these crash data recommendations. So these crash data recommendations that we pulled from the project and that our consultant summarized for ODOT and leadership to implement were set up in two distinct, what we'd say, objectives, right? So we have short-term items that we can implement within our crash data that are already in progress within our agency. And longer term objectives that we may need a little bit help from the legislature, from our participating law enforcement agencies, and several other areas of the state help us get our timeline down to that year or less than 1 year for our crash data. We all recognize that state agencies have their own reporting structures, but some of this internal process refinement that we can do at ODOT in the short term will help us get our crash data timeline down to possibly right around 1 year. So these are things like improved coordination between the DMV and ODOT, and changing some of our crash data processes so that we prioritize fatal and serious injury crashes, and then implement some additional automation and throughout the crash data coding process. In the long term, we'll have to work with the legislature, as I mentioned, to send some proposals, possibly get some funding or change some administrative rules so that we can get our timeline down even further. So some of those items involve having consistent electronic law enforcement reporting across the state, pursuing actions to allow law enforcement to release preliminary reports so we get that data sooner, and then continuing with our crash data reporting system modernization. So next, I'd like to summarize some of the program evaluations and recommendations that we got from this project. So as we evaluated our programs at ODOT via our consultant effort, we looked at the various active transportation and safety related programs that we currently have through this lens of how, or whether or not they emphasize people walking and bicycling, how they prioritize social equity, and whether or not they implement projects quickly. And as you take a quick scan down through this list, you can see that it really set the stage for us to then move forward and provide some recommendations, because we clearly did not already have a program that got at these objectives already. We had some that do them at various stages, such as our sidewalk improvement program, emphasizing people walking and bicycling. And then even our safety quick fix program that does implement projects very quickly. But this analysis gives us an idea on which programs are in need of further refinement to address our stated project and program goals. So some of the initial takeaways that we have from this evaluation. So as we mentioned, state-funded programs have more flexibility for us to meet our equity and rapid implementation goals. As we mentioned previously, federally funded programs have requirements that do not necessarily allow us to modify those programs in a way that we can meet these goals as listed. We learned that our own Safe Routes to School program has some very strong equity-centered criteria, and that was listed as a best practice that we could replicate in a future effort. We found that many of our programs were familiar with rapidly implemented safety countermeasures, but maybe not were wholly focused on implementing those safety countermeasures in one go. And in a sense that we could program one project with a variety of countermeasures that were all able to be implemented within our right of way, maybe possibly without a lot of environmental considerations, and we could get that on the ground in a year. The evaluation also came up with a number of universal improvements, such as that our programs could better utilize our social equity index, better support the priority corridors work that our public transportation division is already undergoing, and also some recommendations for us on the delivery and operations side on how we can seek programmatic exceptions for certain countermeasures and streamline some contracting practices. And so with that, I'll pass it back over to Mac to go over the Rapid Improvements Program concept.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I think as we transition, I think this graphic, some of you may have seen this before, it's not anything new, but I think it helps give a bit of a picture around what Ken was just speaking to around the safety countermeasures. There's, several hundred countermeasures that we could consider when designing a project, but how do we narrow it down to those things that can be rapidly implemented or rapidly put on the ground? I think, signs and lines kind of approach. Illumination, I think, is that one that probably starts to get to the other end of that spectrum. It takes a little while, right, if you don't have electrical or infrastructure in place, but it's certainly not one that's not insurmountable to get up in, 6 to 9 months potentially. Where a complete redesign of the facility obviously is a bigger project, right? If you're thinking about adding more hard infrastructure and changing the nature or the functionality of that facility, that's a much bigger conversation. But we entered this discussion really from the work that Kim was just alluding to, our work previously in the rapid corridor work that we did in summer of 2021, and driving it towards, so what could a concept look like, so that we're being intentional around making some rapid improvements where we have either a hotspot location or where a corridor we know could benefit from these types of improvements. Recognizing that there's always a financial dollar threshold, right? There's only so much funding that can be allocated to X, Y, or Z, but how do we put some structured process around that? So that's, I'm going to pivot to that part of the conversation now around sharing our thoughts around how we might structure a concept around this rapid improvements program. And I'll flag for this group, I was thinking about a handful of incidents that we've generated an ODOT response and gone out there and made these types of improvements. We had a fatality with a family down in Springfield several years ago that we garnered the resources to go put some needed improvements on the ground. We had an unfortunate fatality in Corvallis that I think about on Highway 99. We jumped and put some resources into making some needed improvements there in South Corvallis. And then more recently, over the last couple of years, fatality on 82nd Avenue in Portland, and then more recently, the fatality at on Powell Boulevard near Cleveland High School. So we're seeing these moments come up and we're putting energy and effort to it. So how do we do that in a more structured process with that rapid delivery aspect being the driver, along with those countermeasures that Ken was just highlighting? So we approached it from kind of this perspective of how do we put some structure around it? How do we work in partnership between the delivery and operations division through our traffic and roadway group, as well as the public transportation division? What's missing from that statement is the regions, who are the delivery arm of our agency. They're the ones out there putting the work on the ground, whether it's through consultants and contractors, or possibly even our maintenance crews out there doing some of this type of work. Think about adding new crosswalk markings, for instance, or enhancing a crosswalk marking. That's something we can have our staff certainly take care of. And then how do we work on implementing this in a year or less? And I think more in that 6 to 9 month time period, recognizing it may take a little bit of time to get some of the components. If you're adding lighting, it may take a little time to get that. And then of course, state funds being the tool to give us some flexibility. Next slide, please. So modeling it after some of our other programs that we have, certainly there's been reference to our Safe Routes to School Rapid Response Program, thinking about it from that perspective, putting some work into it here around what would those ped bike risk factors be, or what types of incidences would lead us to a rapid assessment of what kind of improvements on the ground may help. I think about, as we look at every every pedestrian fatality or serious injury, is there something that we could be doing from a safe systems approach, from an engineering standpoint, to make that better in that location, to hopefully make it a little safer into the future? So how do we do that assessment? What level of partnership do we have to determine what countermeasures would the community want? Would we recommend? Certainly cost will always be a factor, as well as the schedule. So what can we do to implement those things rapidly, but also not wait for the whole project to be done at one time? What are the things that we can do in an interim step? And then certainly putting our rigor to reviewing that for statewide consistency, ensuring that our policy around design guidelines will support it, or potentially encourage or allow us to think differently about those design guidelines moving forward, and then move into implementation and doing that quickly and effectively. And I think those 4 I cited earlier are examples that we've proven we can do it, but doing it in a way that doesn't feel like we're throwing it in the middle of something else, that we're planning our resources so that we can implement these types of activities. Next slide, please. So a whole long list of things that we could do. This sort of puts it into a bulleted form of that graphic earlier. Speed is one that comes up oftentimes of what can we do to put either a temporary or permanent speed reduction in place. And then you can see a whole host of other things that certainly are proven countermeasures in this space. We know that through our arts program, as well as other projects we've put on the ground. But how do we leverage these countermeasures along with our education grants that we support through Safe Routes to School or other activities, and then enforcement grants to our transportation safety office? What can we be doing to enforce, to support enforcement activities as well, especially speed being such a big factor? Next slide. So finally, we get down to where's the money? Because there's no new money for this. So we took a hard look at what options do we have. And I think Ken's work that he highlighted helped narrow that down, help bring forward the fact that if we're dealing with federal funds, the time frame for that rapid delivery just really is challenged by federal dollars. So what dedicated state highway fund dollars do we have that we could potentially look at? And we focused on our sidewalk improvement program, or sometimes referred to shortly as SWIP, and our state safety priority funds, which is a relatively new program funded out of House Bill 2017. So we focused on those two areas. SWIP is funded out of our bike ped 1% dollars, and our state safety priority fund program is funded out of House Bill 2017 dollars. Looked at possibly how would we reprioritize funds in those programs beyond what we're already covering in terms of match for federal programs. So that's the bottom bullet points there. We're using those funding sources to match our federal programs. What's the remainder that we could reallocate to this effort? That means there are things that are already sort of planned, right, activities with those funds. So this is not without some trade-offs, which I'll get to in a second, but we're targeting to how could we get to about 10 million a year for this rapid improvement program, setting the appropriate sideboards and putting that discipline to how can we rapidly make those improvements on the ground. So next slide. So certainly there are trade-offs. So some advantages, we've talked a lot about the rapidness in terms of dealing with state funds, a consistent approach, how we can more intentionally utilize these funds in higher areas of social disparity and be more intentional with these dollars. With that comes less flexibility. It also means some projects that we scoped to do in the next STIP cycle of the 24-27 STIP may not be funded to move forward. But if there's benefits in this rapid kind of countermeasure approach that we've been talking about, maybe we keep funding those projects. So we still have some work to do to figure out, are some of those planned activities still in line with the pedestrian safety improvements we're talking about? But just wanted to reinforce, this is not we have new money, we're going to be able to go do this thing without impacts. There are trade-offs that we're considering, and I think we feel comfortable talking about this because we think the trade-offs bring more benefits than they do downsides. Next slide. And we're almost done. So we wanted to bring it to OBPAC as really a first out of the agency conversation to get some feedback. It seemed very appropriate to bring it to this committee. We've got some work to do after today's conversation with our internal executive steering committee, which of course Karen and I are chairing. And then we're planning to bring an OTC conversation to our Transportation Commission, probably in March, but certainly this spring, to share the work that we've been doing, much like we've done today, and also get their support in moving in this direction if we still feel like that's the best approach. So I think last slide is the questions again. Just wanted to maybe close and then we can open it up for discussion. Just we're definitely trying to lean into this in a different way. It's certainly got some challenges of changing existing programs or changing existing practices, but I'll go back to that very first slide I spoke to around a 40+ percent increase in pedestrian fatalities. It's going the wrong direction, and that's why we're putting some effort into this. So I'll pause there. I think Karen, this is where we were going to turn over some discussion. So Jessica, Emma, Mavis, not sure how you guys typically manage that, but I think that we'll
think
turn it back to you.
Emma will manage, and I know Emma had some questions that she sent us in advance, so I turn it to Emma to prioritize and run it how she would like here.
Thank you. So I think my connection's working. Sorry about that tech problem. And Mavis is here for backup if needed, but hopefully we don't need that again. I'm gonna ask for questions from the committee first, and then once we've taken a few of those, if we could go through the questions I submitted, that might be a good way to gain a bit more understanding as to what this proposal does and does not consist of. So committee members, please raise your hands if you have a question. And if no one jumps right on it, we can start with the questions I submitted and then come back to the committee discussion. I want to create space for committee member questions first. Lauren. Lauren, you're muted still.
I'm sorry, I had to move documents out of the way. Looking at the pros and cons, or the disadvantages and advantages. And what I'm seeing is that the disadvantages would create more of these incidents. I mean, they could definitely cause more of the more accidents and problems that we would have to jump on for rapid response. You know, the one thing that I'm concerned about a rapid response is that we do these quick fixes that may end up staying as a permanent solution. And that can also be dangerous in the long run. So I would prefer to see more of a triage that would respond to the incident right now, and with a bigger plan, with a better plan for further action down the road. And also the grants that are given, or the monies that are given to, I don't know how this all works. I work in a little tiny tribal thing with a committee of one. So I don't know how much of this it gets put onto the various areas, like the cities and counties or districts or whatever that handle their money. Can there be requirements to spend a certain amount on something like this, you know, each year in their own areas, and get their feedback as well? And I'll give it up for other people. I have a whole notepad, but I'll give that up to them. Thank you.
If it would, Emma, are you okay just to start answering? Yeah, perfect. I think, Lauren, that last point, I wanted to make sure we make it clear. We're talking about how can we make these rapid improvements on ODOT facilities. And I don't think I said that during my presentation, so I apologize. I'm not sure that we covered the intentional focus being what can we do on ODOT facilities. So not looking at it in terms of a grant program to cities and counties, but what are we doing to target investments in ODOT facilities where we're seeing these higher pedestrian fatalities or the propensity for those to occur. I think the other piece, though, these are all in communities. So it'll be in partnership with I think predominantly cities, maybe some counties, but predominantly with cities. And I think of the intersection of a city street with the state highway, you know, how do we make some improvements in an intersection and not getting into that bureaucratic debate of where is that line if we're talking about a signal improvement, leading pedestrian interval upgrade to a signal. How do we remove some of that barrier?
Thanks, Mac, for the clarification. Mavis?
I'd actually like Beth to go next. Then I'll swoop in.
All right, here I am. Couple things, which Mac, you can respond to if you wish, or you can just leave it there as something that a bike ped member suggested. There are two parts of connecting with the police departments, local police departments. One is how they report, and the other is how they enforce. And I know enforcement is mostly related to speed, but I think when you, on your example of example countermeasures slide, you had a whole list, but what about also using enforcement drives and decoy pedestrians and that as one of the countermeasures, which could be done pretty immediately. And then the other part about the reporting of fatalities and and life-changing crashes. You mentioned that I think you're working with the DMV on that, on streamlining that, and I think also there's some ways that police can be trained to be more understanding of the person who is hit. One might be if they're immediate, what I notice a lot is that only the driver is interviewed because the other person may have died or it was immediately sent to the hospital. So perhaps the police departments could do a follow-up the next day or whenever that person gains consciousness of what happened. So I would like to see more involvement with okay, so let me just say that last part is about reporting crashes, kind of garbage in, garbage out. So I would love to see really thorough reporting of crashes. And those are the two police related things I wanted to mention. And also, what about the known dangerous intersections, but no fatalities have happened yet? People avoid them, pedestrians avoid them, bicyclists avoid them. Lots of near misses, level of traffic stress. I know it's not a fatality and it's not dramatic and it doesn't make the papers, but I would somehow like those to be prioritized too. And I don't know how you could do that, but I wanted to just mention that from the bike ped rolling perspective, that's just as important. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'll just jump in, Beth. I appreciate those comments. I think the law enforcement aspect certainly came up in the work Ken led, not only from the reporting standpoint, the accuracy of information and all the things you were speaking to there. I think the other piece on the rapidness, in terms of we can run out and make some improvements, but law enforcement has to be part of that conversation, which to me is the direct connection to the city partnership, which in my mind has to include law enforcement. We're going to do a targeted improvement in an area. It's got to be full circle in terms of what are we talking about doing from an infrastructure standpoint? What can law enforcement bring to the table in terms of enhanced enforcement activities? Speed feedback signs is obviously a big one for us right now. It's something we can do. And then in some jurisdictions, what are they doing around photo radar enforcement? So something we can encourage or recommend, but that's their authority to go do that, not the agencies. But all good feedback for sure.
And I think to Beth's second part, talking about the prioritization of known locations where there are safety risk factors, that's a big part of the criteria that's in the active transportation needs inventory. And my assumption is that it would also be part of criteria when we're developing this program. We might have some set of the program that's focused on those types of locations, and we might have some subset of funds that we are more reserving for hotspots. The fact of the matter is we're responding to hotspots inconsistently on a statewide basis. And so I think part of why I'm really sold on this program is that it is going to give us an ability to bring a certain consistency and rigor to how we respond to certain incidents. So I just wanted to also mention that.
Great.
Mavis, are you ready to go now?
All right, I have three things I kind of want to touch on, and I know that we're running out of time. One of them is I know that the state dollars, they are super, everybody wants them and they're hard to get. I don't know if we want to jump in that swimming pool because it's already got a lot of chum in the water. So next, what I'm seeing here is you're giving up your long-term vision for like a short-term fix. And I reiterate what Lauren said, I'm kind of worried about that idea. And then last, I get to work with the Safe Routes to School and a couple of those other programs, which are awesome. But what I'm noticing is they're getting more money, which is great, but it's not a streamlined, they're not able to deliver. Everything is awesome. All of the things that are coming in are great. I wish we could fund every single suggestion that comes in, but we're not able to do that because one, the money's not there, and then two, they are not set up to be able to deliver at that large level. And I personally, when I'm looking at this new program, I'm excited about it, but I would like those vetted programs to kind of been maybe given more emphasis so that they can perform. And so like the Safe Routes to School, that's my fallback, is you have that nebula where you have a functioning system and that functioning system grows instead of, a little bit here, instead of having the firework effect, you have this group gets to get to school in a safe, equitable manner, and that grows so that everybody is included instead of a little bit here and a little bit there. But other people have other ideas, so I am going to be quiet.
100, and then I put myself in the queue after you.
Great. This is just a quick microphone check. Can everybody hear me all right? Awesome. First wanted to say thank you for that presentation. It was very enlightening. I think what I first wanted to start with is really grounding ourselves in the issue at hand. Based on the data you showed, we are facing a serious situation where low income and communities of color are facing traffic violence at a higher rate. And I think we need to just like really understand what that means for our state and the importance of acting very rapidly on that. And so I appreciate this program and the energy being spent on thinking through this. One thing I was a little challenged by was sort of these funding considerations, particularly allocating funds from like sidewalk improvement program. That doesn't make sense to me, where we take money from things that we already really need and have historically been underfunded. So I would like to see sort of some emphasis in sort of allocating money from different areas, if that's possible. I was doing some research looking back at the IIJA funding and saw that $165 million just in an instant went to highways and freeways. And so thinking about how quickly we can spend, that would be what, 16 years of this program if we're doing 10 million a year, and they were able to do that basically instantaneously. So that is something I want us to think through, just about how and where this money is coming from. And if we can't be really, really creative and say, if we're going to continue investing in increasing BMT, we will expect to see increases in fatalities as well, even if we're fixing them in these one-off places. As long as we continue to raise the amount of people driving, we will continue to see this happening. So appreciate the conversation, really excited about the potential for this, but I think we need to be very strategic about how we go forward. Thanks.
Andre, I'm glad to follow you since I echo a lot of the same sentiments. I think, yes, we need to do something differently. There's a huge pedestrian fatality problem, and it's not distributed fairly across different demographics. So that is needing to be addressed. I definitely support the data implementation recommendations because that has been a constant challenge. When the DMV director was here, we spoke to her about trying to improve the data, and that has been an ongoing limitation as long as I've been in the profession over the last decade. So it would be wonderful to see improvements to that implemented soon. And yes, we need to lead with equity for funding decisions. I am not sure about the program as currently described, though. I think there's a number of questions that I put in my email that I still don't really understand answers to. And the overarching approach, given the dramatic increase in pedestrian fatalities, I think to Andre's point, I want to just echo, can we shift funding from non-bike ped safety existing funding sources to fulfill this need? Just in a conversation earlier, I was hearing that OTC allocated an additional $42 million to the Rose Quarter project. If we took a little piece of that, like if OTC can allocate that much money in one little like consent calendar, or this is just moving forward because it's where the momentum is kind of decisions, then I would hope that there would be other funding sources that don't cut the existing bike ped and safety programs to fund this effort. So yes, rapid is needed, but I don't know that this funding source is the correct one. Having worked in a local jurisdiction with some of the rapid pedestrian safety funding coming in 2021, I would hope that this program looks differently and that the conversations with the regions or the city jurisdictions, whoever's going to need to be involved to have a successful implementation of the project, is brought into this proposal development conversation, so that it's not a, oh great, there's funding, but you have to set aside your existing workload to be able to accept the funding and do this improvement. So I'm hoping that it can integrate well. And so maybe that means that we, take a little bit more time to find a good funding source and to implement it in a way that doesn't have as many of the disadvantages and the trade-offs that were described. So I'm concerned that we don't have a super clear understanding of how much would be cut and whether the overall cost benefit of those cuts would be better with this rapid response implementation, or might actually do more good with just bolstering the existing programs, which I think Mavis was also speaking to.
Hey, Emma, good commentary. Andre, you as well. Thank you. Good feedback. I know we're at time. What I might suggest, I think Emma, you shared those questions at a time. I think we touched on a couple of them, but obviously not all of them. I think it'd probably be worth us as staff putting together a quick response because we've got some thoughts already generated, and we'll get that over to you guys. I didn't want to, frankly, my opinion was I didn't want to do that ahead of time because I think we needed to have this conversation in some context. We'll commit to that and get something over to you guys fairly quickly because I think we've already thought through some of those answers. The other piece, just flag, the IIJA piece has come up several times. I think that's the struggle, at least I have, with when we're dealing with federal funds. The rapidness, it's almost not in the vernacular of federal dollars. Like there's too many other things that impact that. That's why we're focused on the state highway funds. But also flag, I think the work that we've been doing, I think better informs the safety conversation when the OTC is allocating the next round of STIP funds. And so just flag that conversation will start later this year around the 2730 STIP. And I know that this group has obviously will be engaged in that or have an opportunity to weigh in around, funding allocations and how the commission's considering all those priorities and the trade-offs that they're trying to make. Safety, in my perspective, we've got a pretty robust arts program. And I think part of this work has daylighted what we are doing for the bicycle and pedestrian side of it, whether it's hotspot or systemic, but also we could be doing more. And so I think we're in a better position now to inform what could that more be in that next STIP cycle. But to your point around the region delivery piece, that thing in 2021 was like rapid, like I can't even describe urgent, rapid, whatever other word you want to throw in. We launched that right in the middle of everybody else's work. So we did set some stuff aside. The idea of this concept is that we are planning enough ahead for that capacity to go out and put these things on the ground and not let it interrupt everything else that's in the mix. So definitely some thoughts and considerations have gone into that, but we'll get a response back to those questions. And I think open it up for if anybody else got any after today's discussion, we'd be happy to respond as well.
Could I add one more thing, Emma?
Yeah, briefly, we're a couple minutes over. Thanks.
You tell me no.
Keeping it short.
Yeah, keeping it short. Part of what Mac and I and the team have been talking about is the process for developing this program and the importance of engaging local agencies, whether it's through League of Oregon Cities, Association of Oregon Counties, and other partners to help make sure that there is understanding and a two-way understanding and support. And so that what we come up with can work for all of the potential parties involved. So that was just something that I also wanted to shine a light on. And I would also anticipate that there will likely be additional follow-up with this committee as we can, if the commission gives the go-ahead and we continue to develop this program, we'll definitely want more feedback from you on key points, I'm sure.
Thank you. And on behalf of our committee, I just want to say thank you for bringing this to us early. I know that it's still in development, and so sometimes it's not quite as well polished if something's really in the process of being developed. But appreciate you bringing it to us and really trying to address the dramatic problem that we're all seeing and wanting to do something about.
Thanks for the time, everybody. It's good to see all of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next agenda item, which is a break. So we are on break until 2:25, and then we'll come back and do committee business at that point.
Oh, we don't have audio for you right now, Emma.
Oh, it helps if
There we
I
go.
click the unmute button, probably. Thanks, Jessica. I said welcome back, so now I'll say it again. Moving on to committee business. So I wanted to briefly highlight the 2022 accomplishments. I know that we recently looked at the 2021 accomplishments, but it was really wonderful to read through the 2022 accomplishments and see a number of different things that we took action on. I don't think I had fully absorbed all of it until I read through and saw it written out. I was like, oh yeah, all of that did happen last calendar year. So a number of legislative policy action items. We were involved in writing letters and communicating to the Department of Land Conservation and Development on the climate friendly and equitable communities rulemaking. Beth and I worked on the Bus on Shoulders rulemaking committee letter. I think we continued to outreach and connect with Director Strickler, Assistant Director of Social Equity, Erica McAlpin, continuing to kind of have that networking among ODOT leadership. I've had some more recent meetings with Karen and Macklin, who was just here for our previous agenda item, weighing in on the IIJA, ongoing work with Mobility Advisory Committee. Can read the rest of this and continue through. I think some of the funding highlights really speak to some of the shifts to more bike ped funding in the last handful of years. That's rolling out, even though there's so much more need. We had our first in-person meeting. It was wonderful to meet many of you in person and get to connect in that way for the first time in several years. And we're continuing to work on updating our work plan, bylaws. We've changed to the co-chair leadership model, which I think just kind of shares the roles and responsibilities more. So thanks, Mavis and committee members for supporting that change. And we have a full committee. So just once again, celebrating that and appreciating that all of us are here doing this work, because with a full committee, if we could accomplish this in 2022 with recruitment being an ongoing thing and not having full capacity, I think about what might be possible this next year and the years to come as we have a full membership. I just wanted to highlight a few things in there, but turn your attention to it so that we can have moments of celebration as we continue to go after big and lofty and really important goals and visions for our state. With that, I want to turn it over to Aaron to share a brief update about his membership.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So as I kind of mentioned at the start of the meeting, I am currently in my 4th year, currently doing capstone. I'm actually going to design a roundabout in Dallas, Oregon. So super excited about that. But my plan is to graduate this coming June, which is really exciting. And I started to look for jobs, and I accepted a transportation engineering position at HCR in Bellevue, Washington. So I'm really excited to continue in the transportation sector, but unfortunately I won't be living in Oregon, which makes me very sad. But I've lived here my whole life. I think it's time to explore a different state. But my plan is to continue on the committee up until that May travel meeting and assist with finding a suitable replacement.
Thank you, Aaron. We're gonna miss you. Just like Cadell, we lost you. We need to like have an Oregon, Washington combined committee and then be able to keep our under 21 reps for longer or something like that. You can talk about future bylaw changes for that one. Really appreciate your support, and I'm really glad that we get to do the travel meeting to your home community just prior to you stepping down from the committee. Jessica, do we have a recruitment item on here somewhere else, or do you want to briefly touch on? Oh, let's go to that and then we'll come back to work plan.
Okay.
Let's skip
Yeah.
2 down and then come back.
So on the recruitment, it does link up with the work plan because one of the places, for those of you who had a moment to look at the updated draft of the work plan, where there is a need for a couple more volunteers is in the organizational health side focus area. Right now, we have Aaron listed as the point person for that portion of the work plan. And that is great, as he's going to be taking a leading role in helping us find a replacement for the under 21 position, but is clearly something where we're going to need a little bit more support. Typically, we've got 2 to 3 people on a recruitment working group or subcommittee when we have an active recruitment, and that many folks working on some of the other items in that portion of the work plan as well. Specifically for the under 21 recruitment, we do have a pretty good structure and list of folks to outreach to from previous recruitments to draw from in this process. So it's been a lot of just kind of making those one-on-one calls and contacts with folks to make them aware of the opportunity, particularly with professors and different student organizations. And we also, this time around, the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee has recently added multiple youth members. And so there are some new connections and interested folks from that effort that we can also luckily draw from for the OBPAC recruitment.
Having served on a recruitment for Aaron when we got the pleasure of inviting him onto the committee, it was really inspiring to read the materials and connect with the younger folks who were applying to be on OBPAC. So if you want to be inspired and uplifted, this is a great way to contribute to our committee. I really enjoyed it when I had the opportunity a couple of years ago.
Question,
Anyone
Jessica,
interested in helping? Yeah.
are you putting out, are you gonna put out that there's an opening?
Yeah, usually the process that we go through is to get the recruitment group together. I will have a draft recruitment notice that we send out through GovDelivery that I get that group to just give the okay to before it goes out. And then we also just kind of assign folks. So this is the group of, maybe 3 or 4 people that you're going to call or email directly to make that one-on-one contact with, because that's where we have the most impact and result from our outreach. So the question for the committee at hand then is, are there any folks who would like to volunteer to participate in that recruitment working group?
Lauren? We got Aaron, Lauren, or one more?
Yeah, I did it for the safe routes, and it was fun. It was very inspiring. We even had several who were still in high school, so it was very cool. But I know you want a little older unless they've been held back a few years. But if anybody needs a little push, it's a really fun task to do.
If I could clone myself, I would do it, but I don't have capacity right now. So last call for a third person. Otherwise, I think we could go forward with two. Jessica, have we done two in the past? Does that work? No one else is jumping out of their seat, raising their hand.
I'm looking at Bill, since you didn't have a chance to chime in on which parts of the work plan you were excited about, since you were out for surgery last meeting.
My reluctance is that I'm going to be out of state from February 22nd to March 14th. I'll be on the East Coast.
We probably would be doing interviews after you're back.
Okay, put me down.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Great. You're already making good progress. So we have Erin, Lauren, and Bill on the under 21 member recruitment task force. And we will now go back to the work plan next steps. And I know that this item had to shift a little bit. Holidays happened. Jessica helped a lot with creating our draft work plan that is shared in the folder today. I'd hoped that we could have done a little bit more individual work, but Jessica really helped leap it forward in time. And then with the rapid implementation item coming up, we had to shift things around on our agenda today so that we aren't focusing quite as much on the work plan, but I think we can keep this moving forward. So Jessica, do you want to just kind of share an overview of where it's at now and what our next steps are between now and our next meeting?
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up here. Oh, and I have a couple folks in the waiting room to let in. So let me share my screen. For any of you who have not had a chance to look at what is in the drive. So the table format is very similar to what we had for our previous work plan, but streamlined a little bit. So we have 3 focus areas based on, or 4 focus areas, sorry, that are updated based on the conversation that the committee had at the last couple of meetings of just what are you excited to do as a member of the committee, and what brings you to the OBPAC table. What are the areas where the committee feels they've had the most impact over the last couple of years, and how do we continue to work forward in those different areas over just the next 2 years, which is only 12 meetings at the end of the day. So we have a tendency to be very ambitious with this group, which is why your accomplishments lists are always so long at the end of every year, but also has a tendency to stretch people pretty thin. So our goal with this one is to focus on achievable in the next couple of years, folks who are passionate to play a leadership role in it, and really try to keep things focused. Challenge of keeping this less than 2 pages long at the end of the day when we're done. So those new focus areas are the network development and advocacy. That includes the outreach to area commissions on transportation and local bike ped advisory committees, and has a pretty good established group of folks that have been working on that, as well as serving as representatives of OBPAC on other committees. advising ODOT and the Parks and Recreation Department. And this is also an area where I added that column of partners, since we are trying to kind of bring more people in under the big tent of doing this work and not stretch people so thin. I see this as a column that's going to be growing over the next several years of folks that are not governor appointed OBPAC members, but the committee is appointing to serve as a liaison to the committee for them, kind of like what Karen was talking about as a potential new role with the Public Transportation Advisory Committee at the beginning of the meeting. So I have a pretty good established group for that focus area, but some question marks next to names. So just need to get some clarity on who all wants to be involved in those so you can get together. And like Emma said, goal is for these groups to get together and kind of workshop. Are these goals, strategies, and deliverables really what the committee is excited to work on and thinks they can achieve over the next couple of years? Next area is funding programs. This is another one where Andre is the sole point person right now. So if there are some other folks who want to dive in on the funding program piece of things, it probably would be good to have a couple more representatives. So that is looking at the point people for proposals like we heard from Karen and Mac today about rapid response program, as well as Great Street, Safe Routes to School, upcoming state transportation improvement planning. This tends to be an area where the committee is generating a larger number of letters to the Transportation Commission and to ODOT leadership as a deliverable. Then leadership support and education. So as Emma pointed out, the committee's been really nurturing and growing those relationships with leadership at ODOT. So continuing to do that going forward, as well as supporting and educating that leadership on different initiatives that are of importance to the committee, like implementation of the bike bill and new design guidance that the committee's been involved in, like the Blueprint for Urban Design. And last but not least, the committee health piece, which includes the ensuring that we are maintaining a diverse and representative group of voices and experiences around the table at OBPAC, and maintaining compliance with new legal requirements around that, to recruitment, and making sure we're providing the training, onboarding, support, and safe, supportive environment that committee members need to be effective and for this group and its members to thrive. So that was a longer explanation than Emma probably wanted.
Thorough overview. Thank you. So I saw Beth was raising her hand. If committee members want to speak up and share any changes you wish to make with where you're focusing on the work plan, now would be a great time to identify that so that we can have smaller groups meet between now and our March meeting to refine this. In those refining conversations, I think it would be helpful to put some specific target deadlines on these items, because some items I would hope that they'd be done in the next maybe 6 months, and other items are much more ambitious and might be more like the 2-year time frame. So differentiating in our smaller work groups would be helpful with that. Beth, what are you seeing here?
All right.
Floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. Can you hear me okay this way, or should I use my phone? Doesn't matter, huh?
Fine, either way.
Okay. So I added item 1.4, and I took the liberty of doing that. It can easily go away. Basically, I was wondering if we wanted to take on kind of being leaders in helping local communities to know what's down the pike for the ones that don't have micro mobility, private companies, ones, et cetera, any sort of new technologies in, using smartphone technologies and stuff like that. So, so I added the 1.4, educate selves and provide leadership to local jurisdictions and or local bike ped advisory committees regarding newer mobility technologies that might affect them. The strategy for doing that might be creating position papers, white papers, best practices for local jurisdictions to use. And the outcome being, just threw that out, 3 white papers. What does the bike ped, what do we think about that? I am not married to it. Let me just put that out. Is it too much?
Can I offer that it might be useful to meet the new statewide micro mobility coordinator and to kind of hear from her what she's thinking in terms of her work plan and to see if this is within her bailiwick. I have no idea if it is or is not, but that might be one step to take.
Yeah, Karen, I think if this can be done by ODOT instead of us, great.
What?
So maybe we want to just revise this to be work with ODOT regarding micro mobility innovations to provide information to local jurisdictions. Is that something we want to do?
I'll share my 2 cents. Having worked on a local bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee, there's definitely questions, conversations around new mobility, especially path usage, safety. How does all this different stuff mix together or not? So I think there's interest. It'll be interesting to hear what other local committees are saying when that meeting happens with the outreach group. One way we could maybe incorporate this but keep it a more bite-sized piece would be to change the strategy and outcome, as Karen was suggesting, to having that first conversation and meeting with the micromobility coordinator. And then the outcome could be maybe sharing what we learn with the bike ped advisory committees or some smaller little tasks that we could achieve in the next 6 months or less. And then maybe we update this once we have that additional information.
That's totally fine with me. Any other opinions?
I'll just say that for the white paper deliverable, those have typically been things that the committee has asked staff to try to prioritize. I don't think we've had the committee actually develop them outside of things that were produced by committee members who were also in a grad school or some sort of program where they get to double dip.
Yeah. So yeah, take that off. Karen?
I'm agreeing with taking it off. We've had other advisory committees who've wanted to do things about best practices. And we sometimes as the state, if it's like something that we post as a best practice, then we become on the hook for that content, even if it is something that's coming from our advisory committee. So I would provide caution, words of caution to the committee in your considerations.
Yeah.
Not that getting that subject matter out there isn't an important and worthy thing, because it really is. So I appreciate the line of conversation.
I'm thinking
That's
just
curious.
soften it to be much more suggest that this happens or encourage or not actually do the do the work. And so I would propose that Emma take a stab at changing the wording. Is she doing it right now? Is somebody doing it right now?
Jessica might be. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing anything change.
Yeah, I don't have it open in the Google version right now because I got some feedback that it's a little hard with the screen sharing with all the extra stuff on Google. But
Yeah, so if anybody wants to take that on, then maybe we could decide on it at the next meeting. To take on rewriting it.
Are you interested in it, Beth? Because I think we have a lot on here, and what we need to focus on in the next few minutes here is just figuring out who's on which section, so we can have the meetings in between. Okay, well, if you're not willing, and anyone else wanting to kind of own this item, I think this might be our narrowing opportunity. And so if there's things that come up in the other meetings and conversations, and we can pass along information, by all means, we can go above and beyond our work plan. Just want to keep our focus a little bit more narrow so that we do set out to accomplish what we say we will
please.
do.
Agreed.
just from a staff coordination perspective, since Amanda, our new micromobility coordinator, is pretty new, we are having some internal coordination meetings over the next couple months to kind of figure out what is her work plan. So this might be a good one to loop back on when you have your kind of status check-in on the work plan, and the agency has a little bit more that we can share of, like, this is the stuff that we have capacity and to prioritize.
Sounds good. So I think we're looking for someone else to add to organizational health. If you are not listed on the work plan, or you would like to contribute more, now is the time to speak up. I will speak on my own behalf. I would be happy to take myself off of the leadership support and education. I will be doing some of that type of work with the Mobility Advisory Committee efforts, but that's up above in section 1. So I could take myself off of the leadership support and education, and I'd be willing to be either on the organizational committee health or the funding programs with Andre, but I can't do both of those. So maybe we'll see where everyone else ends up, and then I'll switch to one of those two.
I was going to volunteer, but somebody already put my name in there. So that's fine. And you can, I'll also could take the question mark off of the outreach, because I'll continue to do that as well.
Great. So Lauren, you're on outreach, and then down further, was there another one?
Well, the community health, or the, I'm sorry, committee health, the last one.
Committee health.
Yeah.
Great. So you and Erin are on committee health.
And Bill, it looks like Bill's on there too.
Yeah, I had added Lauren and Bill just because that was who we had volunteered for the recruitment.
Oh, yeah.
And that is the main task underneath that focus area.
So if you can strike me from leadership support and education, I am willing to be on the funding section. Balance things out.
Right, and Andre, is it okay if I put you and Emma just as the two main leads for this focus area? I've got.
Yeah, that's totally.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Question on staffing, on OBPAC leads. Aren't we thinking about getting more members? Suggesting we have more members on OBPAC? Is that going to happen?
Yes, that I think is under committee health, or it has been in the past. I did have some emails with staff recently because there's yet another rulemaking advisory committee that wants OBPAC representation on it, because there could be opportunities to shift the Scenic Bikeway Advisory Committee to have an OBPAC appointed member as opposed to one of us actually serving on that committee. So far we've been going this partner route as opposed to very much happening on the legislative side of things, which would be needed to change our actual committee membership. That being said, I think we should still keep pushing for the legislative change as a slightly longer term improvement.
Yeah.
Jessica, did I get that right? Was there anything to add on our capacity question?
No, I think that, so that piece is in here of, we've done the outreach from the previous work plan to get that definite answer of there needs to be legislative change to add more voting members. Question is, do you want to have something in here that specifically talks about promoting that, having more resource members, or we need to figure out a good term for it. OBPAC appointed representatives to other committees.
I'm for that.
Okay, last call for any adjustments on which pieces of the work plan.
With me,
Jessica, do you want to just do a quick rundown? Yeah, Beth, go ahead.
okay, so I'd like to be taken off the e-bikes, and instead, be on the Parks and Rec local government grants list.
Great, we're showing that right now.
And I don't think we have time to talk about that, but I'd contingent on me learning what exactly that would entail of me, which we don't need to do here, but tentatively put me on there.
I think that's one of our other committee business agenda items. Mavis, do you want to just jump in right now and provide that explanation?
Yeah. So that one's a pretty big lift for about a week. And you get to give away a lot of money, which is stupendous, but it is not for the faint of heart. That has kind of been one of the ones that I was doing. And if you want it, you can have it, and I will go back to e-bikes. That's totally fine.
I'm not sure, Mavis. So it's
I know,
looking
I'm
at a
selling it,
lot of
but-
grant applications and being on
Yes.
the committee.
Yeah. You get to give away. Hang on. So here's my report for the local government grant, the recreation one. So it is $6 million total. There's 3 grants. There's a large, small, and the planning grant that are within that. You would be on a committee putting forward the large grants. So you get to hear everybody, all the parks and everybody be like, hey, we want to do this. We want to build this. This is going to be fabulous. And you get to sit there and go, so how are people going to bike here? How are you going to make this? Where's the bike parking? Where's the bike charging station? You get to sit there and do that, which is pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
June, July is when the review for those grants will be coming up. And then in September, that commission will put that forward and say, these are the ones that we're actually going to fund. So
Is it possible to do this after hours, or how does that work?
it is after hours. You go through a whole bunch of grants, you score them, and then you listen to the grantees present. It really is, it's a 3 or 4 day sit down, listen to them, and finalize your evaluation of their project.
So that would be 8 to 5, right? The listening to them part.
Yep.
I don't know if I can do that. Probably not, because I have an 8 to 5 job. Anybody else on the committee?
Well, I've been doing it. It is out there for anybody who wants to take it on, but
Oh, I didn't know you were listed under there. It says TBD.
well, that's because I was trying to get rid of it.
Sorry, Mavis. I can do the background stuff off hours and assist you that way,
Well,
but
I'll stick with it. It's not a problem.
thanks.
Unless somebody else wants it. Anybody? Dell? Oh, is he even on here? There he is.
I was muted. I'm sorry. I'm sort of too busy for that, I think.
Okay.
Mavis, I think you're continuing on. So with that, let's just do a brief review of who's on which section so we know who our buddies are or little groupings to pair up over the next 2 months. Kind of meet, refresh the section if there's any specifics or timeline information that you want to add in, or even just talking through how you might get this done. We'll just do a quick review and keep moving along since we have a number of other items to cover in this item.
So now that I'm unmuted, core group around network development and advocacy is Beth, Dell, Aaron. There's still a question mark on Aaron and Lauren. For funding, Andre and Emma. And I think I have this wrong, of Parks and Rec local grants, Mavis. Leadership support and education, Mavis, Andre, Aaron, and Bill. And committee health, Aaron, Lauren, and Bill.
Question on this, when Aaron moves on, is he just gonna switch over to the partner column, or how does that work? We don't know.
Can he be a member emeritus? Is that a slot we could open up?
We
No.
can, except he's moving to Washington.
Well, do good things, Aaron.
So
I'd be more than happy to be on call if any engineering expertise is needed.
So the firm that Aaron is going to is the consulting firm that we hired for the safety evaluation that Karen and Mac were presenting on. So hopefully we will still have opportunities to work with him in his new professional capacity.
Thank you, Jessica, for that overview. So we know who our groupings are. Jessica, are you willing to support us to get together between now and our next meeting and move this along? I don't think it's going to take a lot, but I think just having a little touch point would be helpful. I'm going to keep us moving. It is 3:01 and we have till 3:15 to finish our committee business agenda items. So next up is the April Oregon Community PAS workshop scheduling. There's a doodle link poll. If you haven't filled it out yet, please do so right now so we can figure out what time of day on, I think, April 27th or whatever that date was, that we're going to meet as a pre-meeting to our Oregon Community PAS funding recommendation at the May full committee meeting. Next up is local bike ped advisory committee outreach subcommittee, and I think we might have had an outdated list of people listed on this one because I think Andre is now off, and according to the work plan we were just looking at, there were different names there. So who from that group would like to provide an update?
Lauren?
Sure. We have a little bit of a stall, but we're going to get back on track with that and find a new date to do the presentation for the local OBPACs, and that's kind of it. It's just got a little bit too much with the holidays and outreach to the proper people and COVID. So we will reconvene and get back on track. That's all I've got for that.
Why don't we reconvene this month? Within the next 30 days. Does that sound good?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can do that through our emails.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I think
Thank
the
you,
great
and-
news is from that outreach, there was a handful of folks who were really excited about the fact that the committee was moving forward with this. So
Fantastic. had a meeting with the Street Trust this morning, and they reminded me that the Oregon Active Transportation Summit is coming up at the end of April. So one concept for this work group to consider is that you could have the local BPAC outreach virtual gathering maybe between now and then, sometime in March or February, March. And then potentially, if you wanted to put in a proposal for the Oregon Active Transportation Summit to have a virtual gathering of the Area Commission on Transportation, Bike Ped, transit-related representatives, and the local committee members all in one meeting, so that we're taking the first group we met with, the second group that we're meeting with, and then bringing them all together and using the platform and resources provided by the statewide transportation summit. So if you want to talk details or share more information, connect offline. I think Andre also is well looped into that and the logistics. So either of us can support, but wanted to pass off that tip to your work group.
I think that's a great idea, Emma. So you're talking about meeting in person at the summit or virtual?
It could be a Zoom-based platform for
Got
the
it.
summit. That would make it easier for people all across the state to join, but I think having it listed there and convening, we may get more partners and more impact by connecting up with that existing effort.
Great. Let's talk about that, Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you and Aaron are a little more familiar with that than I am, so that's good.
Yeah, just let us know. And I can then put you in touch with our executive director as well to sort of solidify that if that's the direction you'd like.
Good. Hey, Oregon Transportation Commission Committee Chairs meeting. Mavis?
So I got the opportunity to represent you guys at the chair commission. So they called everybody in from all the acts and did a fair number of presentations for us. I stood up and told them that people are dying because they are getting hit by cars, and they were very excited about that new information. And then basically there was a lot of hubbub around they're putting forward a major funding lift because they are feeling that they do not have enough money to maintain the system that they have, much less improve it. And so major funding list will be coming down the pike. And then they were very focused on closing the feedback loop for groups like us, so the NEACs and the whatevers around, where they come and they ask our opinion and then they just kind of go away. They're trying to focus on bringing that information back to us so that we know we were actually heard instead of just talking to a vacant room. Any questions? Anybody else have a insight to the chair meeting? Awesome. Somebody else's turn.
Okay, I'll keep us moving along. Thank you, Mavis, for representing our committee in that significant statewide meeting. My update on the Mobility Advisory Committee / Safety and Mobility Policy Advisory Committee. I think there's a part of that acronym list missing there in our agenda. So MAC and SIMPAC for short. I met with Bob Jundeff, Nick Meltzer, our bicycle and pedestrian representative on the Mobility Advisory that OBPAC has appointed. And we met with Karen Criswell, Mackland, and Cooper Brown. I don't remember if Cooper was at that meeting or
I think so.
That was
David Kim
ODOT executive.
and Mike
David
Kim
Kim
there,
was
I
there
think,
for that one. They
also.
swapped out because Cooper Brown has left the agency. David Kim came into this latest meeting. So we met in December. The executive group proposed a engagement initiative to kind of take a relook at the safety and mobility stakeholder advisory committees, because there's a number of different committees as we're beginning to learn it, and it's not always clear as to exactly what the purpose, charge, charter of each group is. So different things have been developed over time, and to gain a bit more clarity and help modernize the committees that ODOT has, there's a proposal to do some short-term incremental improvements, which were proposed in the next 1 to 3 months. This could be some process changes to how the Mobility Advisory Committee and the Stakeholder Forum operate for reviewing the ORS 366215, so the hole in the air freight routes. So some agenda management, enforcing accountability for project review to be early in design, standardizing some meeting format and processy items, and then a bigger kind of longer term effort in the next 6 to 12 months that would bring on a third-party neutral consultant to help facilitate a process that would engage multiple different stakeholders. We'd be part of that process to develop a vision and principles for success, kind of take a relook at what are the key elements for stakeholder engagement, how do the House Bill 2985 diversifying ODOT Advisory Committee requirements get integrated with these groups, a number of different changes. So they, I think, have heard us. It's good that we're having these meetings. And I said, this is great that there's movement forward. And I think an appetite for change among the ODOT executive leadership members to see things shift more fully, with an acknowledgement that there's a lot of ingrained historical structures in place. And so to change anything, it's going to take some conversations and a tactful approach. So that is where things are at now. That meeting was about a month ago. I don't know if there's updates on the 1 to 3 month short-term implementation items, or Karen, if you have any other updates, because I think that group was going to go meet with some other stakeholders and then say, yes, we're green lighted, or we're adjusting things slightly and then moving forward.
I do not have any further updates, but Mac and I did talk briefly about it this afternoon and looping back together and continuing to try to work on that. The legislature coming into session always makes things a little bit more interesting and harder to be responsive at this time of year. So I'll say that.
So I think this is good progress. Had some discussion around the numerous requests that we've been getting, because some of this conversation brought in, we're being asked to have bike and ped representatives on SIMPAC in addition to the MAC, in addition to maybe other things. So as more and more requests come forward, my draft recommendation would be that OBPAC doesn't give time to committees that don't have a charter or a work group with a clear scope of work. If we're being asked to show up and be part of conversations, whether it's these committees or the work group on travel lane width, it's really important to know that our time is going to be valued. And if we're just showing up to be in a confused conversation, then I don't think that's a very good use of our time. But if there are outcomes or recommendations for change that are being presented and moving forward, it would be really good to include us so that we have the opportunity to comment. I just want to be cognizant of how much volunteer time we're trying to allocate to numerous different committees that are now requesting our involvement. Any comments, questions, reflections on that before I move us along? Ongoing effort, but I think it's an important one. Next is Dell on the Scenic Bikeways and Recreational Trails Advisory Committee update.
Okay, both of those committees have been relatively dormant during the winter, but we have big plans for the coming year. We got together, we had a Bikeways Zoom meeting in November, and Clint is newly chairing that and doing a great job. He's still in the process of sort of orienting and getting acquainted with everybody. They're actively recruiting at least 2 new members, and it's open until I guess it's just next week, till the end of January, and then they will elect 2. Apparently they've been getting a large number of applicants for this, so that's a good sign. ORTAC had a Zoom meeting. We also met in person back in October to do a trail review on the Banks Vernonia Trail. And since that is also part of the Oregon Scenic Bikeways, I took the liberty of inviting Clint. So we sort of basically had a joint review of that, both the Bikeways Committee and the ORTAC. And there were 7 of us, which included Clint and Jody, 4 of our ORTAC members, and the state park manager. It was quite successful. We had a great meeting. Going forward, both of these committees are planning to meet probably mostly by Zoom quarterly. But also both of them plan to meet in person to do trail reviews. The Scenic Bikeways, of course, would be mostly biking. The ORTAC is more hiking trails, and do 2 to 3 trail reviews during the course of next year. None are scheduled yet, but they will come up in our next meeting, I'm sure. I'm a member of both of these committees representing ORTAC, and there's a suggestion that somebody from OBPAC should be on the Scenic Bikeways Committee. Well, I'm already on it, and I'd be more than willing to represent both. So if that's a possibility, write me in.
Thank you, Dell. And I think, your service is greatly appreciated. And with the rulemaking process, I think allowing for future expansion where OBPAC could appoint a different representative would probably be wise to increase our capacity, because you'll do your service, which will be great. But as time goes on, we may want to have more flexibility built into who sits at which tables, just to support different people in the future. Any questions for Dell? Okay, over to you, Beth, for the Bus on Shoulders update.
It's basically Emma and I wrote a letter, if you recall, saying there's some things we want to know about and to keep us posted. And there's their ODOT employee liaison has sent them the letter, and they will be probably writing us back with a formal response any day now. That's the update.
Thank you. And Mavis already covered the OPRD local government grants, so she's going to continue her service on that heavy lifting effort, but doing good throughout our state, getting those dollars out the door onto projects. And then, Jessica, are there any pressing legislative updates, or can we keep moving along?
Just real quickly, that there were some things that were on the initial draft of the agenda and that Kaz had provided updates on at OBPAC's last meeting that were in ODOT's legislative agenda for this session, like the Safe Routes to School expansions to high schools and eligibility for Safe Routes to School within 2 miles rather than within 1 mile of schools. Those were approved by our previous governor, but haven't gone through that process with the new governor yet. So if anybody saw anything from the last meeting or minutes that said there was something that needed to have a letter written in March, don't have to worry about that, because we are still in a holding pattern, waiting for everything to go through the process with our new governor. So.
In a governor's transition year, the governor has until February 1st to release the governor's recommended budget. So that's part of what we are, the royal we, everybody is waiting to see. And I'm not, I think the previous governor actually didn't, Governor Brown didn't actually review or approve many things because she mostly wanted to wait and let incoming Governor Kotek make her own decisions about what she wanted to see in her budget.
And there are, just generally speaking, as Karen mentioned, legislative agenda, those interesting things to schedules. There have been a lot of bills introduced that are related to active transportation in this session. I'm just going to refer you to, there is a Bike Portland story that kind of goes through and does a 1-paragraph summary of all of them. That's going to be much more interesting than the write-ups that staff has to put together on them. But a lot of them, none of them are scheduled anywhere right now. So we'll keep you in the loop as interesting things start happening in the session.
The joint committee is pretty much in a space and a place where they're hearing updates on topics of interest to them. But yes, Jessica's 100% right in terms of not having any bills scheduled for hearing yet. So we are watching and waiting.
Sounds good. So that brings us to the end of committee business, and we'll move into the grant program updates now. Starting with Leanne Ferguson with Safe Routes to School, then Innovative Mobility. Great Streets has some packet info, and Oregon Community Paths also see the packet. And if we can get through this section by 3:40, we could have a little stretch break, which I know a little refresh before the final sprint to the end of our meeting could probably be a nice thing. So welcome, Leanne. Are you ready to go?
I am. Jess, did you tell me Dorian might go first?
I think we were going to switch it up and have Dorian go first, and then give Leanne the rest of the time if Dorian is ready to go. Sorry for that last minute switcheroo, Emma.
Welcome back, Dorian. And you're no longer on your first day, like our last meeting.
I'll try to make my update short and sweet so I can pass it over to Leanne. I think I introduced myself just once briefly, so I'm going to give you like a 30-second introduction and recap in case you haven't heard from me yet. So hello, everyone. My name is Dorian Pacheco. I use she, her pronouns. And my background is in community engagement and program evaluation. I've been at ODOT for 2 months now, and I am the Innovative Mobility Program Manager. The IMP is a new program at ODOT that has a hyper-focus on equity and reducing barriers to underserved communities' access to safe and affordable transportation. A lot of my work this year is related to actually standing up the program. We have $20 million in total funding through 2027, and that'll include large grants, which are set to open late this year, contracted services, which will also include technical assistance for prospective grant applicants and grant awardees, and then, of course, micro grants, which are the component of the IMP that's already up and running. As of today, we have 50 micro grant applications, and more are trickling in. Last summer, CAS did some community engagement to raise awareness of the IMP, understand barriers to applying for grant funding, and also barriers to, again, safe and affordable transportation in the first place. We'll be continuing to do community engagement throughout the life cycle of this program, and I'll be regularly evaluating who we've reached, where there are gaps in engagement, and what we need to do to address those gaps. I recently did an evaluation of the engagement that we did last summer, and right now my big foci, I guess, plural, for engagement are rural areas, culturally specific community-based organizations, tribes, and schools. Schools including like elementary, middle, and high schools, as well as universities like community colleges. We mostly reached CBOs in Multnomah County, and that's reflected in the micro grant applications we've received to date. I'm refining a community engagement and outreach plan, so I welcome any feedback from the committee to make sure that we do reach, again, rural areas, schools, and culturally specific organizations this year. I'm looking forward to providing you all with more updates, and please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. And I will pass it off to Leanne now.
Thanks,
Thank
Dorian.
you.
If you can put your email in the chat, then people can connect more easily. Oh, I have one clarifying question for the large grants. Is there a dollar amount for minimum or maximum?
We're in the very beginning process of designing the large grants, so there are no dollar amounts assigned to them just yet, but I'll have that information to you in the summer.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Leanne.
Thank you. It's nice to see everybody. I have a couple of slides that I made just to have a couple of visuals, but they're not in your slide deck. So I will share them with Jessica immediately after this so that she can put them into the materials. And my name is Leanne Ferguson. I am the Safe Routes to School. Are you guys seeing a slide that says OBPAC on it?
Yes, you're
Perfect.
doing ODOT. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. It's either that or my email, but I think you guys are seeing the right one. My name is Leanne Ferguson. I'm the Safe Routes to School Program Manager here at ODOT, currently wearing 2 hats as we hire for my replacement who will be here on February 6th. Her name is Zal Posadas, and she's been on the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee for a long time. So I'm really excited to have her come in. And what an exciting moment to come in. We've just had a really productive year in 2022 that I want to tell you all about. We've just approved some new grants, and the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee is required to work with the Oregon Bike and Ped Advisory Committee through sharing a member in Mavis, thank you Mavis, and doing a consult with you all once every once in a while, every cycle, to just get your thoughts about values around the program. So if we have time today, do we have time today to do the consult, or should I just focus on an update?
We have till, say, 40 past the hour, so you have 15 minutes.
All right,
What would you like to do?
Potentially do it, but if you guys have more thoughts than we can have within 15 minutes, I'm happy to come back in March and we can take a little bit more time. So the Safe Routes to School program at ODOT vision is to help students and families have access to choices when getting to school. So safe choices of shared transportation options, walking and biking. And we do that through grants and programs to work with communities to help addressing those barriers to walking and biking to school. So at the end of this presentation, I'll come back to this question, but wanted to give it to you early so that you can start thinking about it. Do you have any thoughts for the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee as they head towards recommending another round of funds in 2024? So now we're looking ahead. We've just recommended a good chunk of money to some projects. I'm going to tell you all about it. And we're starting to look ahead to 2024. And we're really spending this next year in 2023 preparing for that 2024 solicitation, talking about values, updating our scoring criteria and things like that. So I wanted to get you guys in on the ground floor of providing any input that you've been thinking about. This is our list of advisory committee members. Beth, did you have a question?
I had a comment.
Yeah.
You were asking for comments, right?
Oh, I'm going to come back to that slide at the end, and then we'll have plenty of time. So just so you can start thinking about it now. I'm glad you're already thinking about it. Feel free to put stuff in the chat in the meantime so you don't lose any thoughts at it. So high level Safe Routes to School. This is a list of our committee, Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, of which Mavis Hartz is a member. We also have some tribal representation. We've got youth now on the committee. We've got some health representation, the Oregon Department of Education, some Safe Routes to School practitioners, the Association of Oregon Counties, the League of Oregon Cities. This is a pretty big and robust committee. Our committee runs on our guiding principles, which is around addressing transportation disparities, safety, maximizing resources, geographic balance, health, communication, collaboration, and coordination, and all that's tied together through data around racial equity. We know that there is a lot of data that shows the disproportionate effect of injury and fatality on our roadways, and we want to lead with with that data as we are making decisions. So in celebrating in 2022, we were able to fund 26 new construction projects that were just approved by the OTC not last week, but the week before on Thursday. We were able to select 13 communities in which to work with to create some safe routes to school plans. And our education program will be working with 13 communities at 3 different levels. Our Education Plus level is for our very beginners, where they get an education grant to capacity building around bike safety, education programs, pedestrian safety education programs, encouragement programs at schools, things like that. But they're very beginning, so they also get a little bit of technical assistance along with that grant. And then we have 5 education grants that already have some base work, and they just need some additional funding to continue their capacity. And then we've got 3 innovation grants. So here's a spread of all the things that we were able to fund in 2022. Or all the decisions that we were able to make in 2022 that now those grants will start and get running in 2023. This is an image. I don't have a great map yet of our funded projects over a social equity map, but this is the best I can do at this moment in time. The map on the lower left hand of the corner is a map that shows social equity indicators in our schools. So the dark purple squares are the lowest income schools that also have above the state average of chronic absent students, above the state average of English as a second language learners, above the state average in students of color, and above the state average in tribal students. So the purple squares are where we know the most need is. And it kind of shows you a little bit how that is actually spread out across the state. And you can see that you can kind of see by showing where we're funding projects in Oregon, that a lot of it lines up a little bit, or at least there's a funded project in most places. So like, for example, in the very middle of the state, like that Madras area, we've got a blue square in that area. If you look down towards like the Medford area, where we've got some purple squares, we've got some funding down in the Medford area as well for all the funded projects. So more on this type of analysis to come, but this is the best visual I have right now to show that. We think that our scoring criteria to some extent is working. The overall picture of who we funded, the majority of the funds went to cities. Second was counties. For our commitment to equity, all of the funded projects were for students at Title I schools, which are low-income schools in Oregon. Also, our commitment to geographic balance, we had 63% of the funds go to areas outside of a metropolitan planning organization, meaning that rural communities were able to compete, and even 30% going to communities under 5,000 people. So rural communities can compete, urban communities as well as small communities all have kind of a chance to, all can get funds through this program. And we have a commitment to safety where 87% of our funds went to projects that have a priority safety corridor, which to us means has that high crash risk factors, has those high crash risk factors. These are the projects that were completed in 2022. So ones that we funded before, we were able to finish our project in Milwaukee, North Bend, Marion County, Gaston, and Monroe, all complete in 2022. Super excited about it. This one in North Bend is one that I actually visited out before we built it. And there it was like a paint shop across the street that had on the marquee, "Watch out, kids cross here." So we were able to come in and put this great crossing in a location where before, like the shop owners were the ones that were trying to tell people. So just one little story to get you through to the end of this meeting. Looking ahead, we run this program in 2-year cycles. So like I said, we're spending this next year preparing to get funding out the door again, to run the next solicitation in 2024, to get funding out the door again in 2025 and 26. So we're looking ahead here, and our the programs that we will be creating scoring criteria for and values around are our construction program, which I just talked to you a little bit about, our rapid response program, which will get $3 million during that time, our planning assistance or our project identification program, where we can send a consultant in to do some planning with the community, and our education grants and services, which will have about $2.6 million for that 25-26 timeframe. I have a couple, I know we have a lot of new people, so I included a couple of slides, just a couple more details about each of these individual programs. Our construction grant program is what we just wrapped up. We basically fund crossings and sidewalks near schools. Here are some of the eligibility criteria for that program, so you can kind of get a better idea of what we're doing. Addressing a barrier to students walking and rolling within a mile of school. There is a cash match requirement. It needs to be aligned with the plan, has the support of the school or school district. So a couple of things that need to be in place, but then communities and counties, cities, counties, and tribes can apply for this grant program. We also have the rapid response program, which has the same criteria as that slide I just showed you, except it's an ongoing rolling application that's available all year round. And there are some real specific criteria that need to be in place in order to be eligible. And one is that there's a timely opportunity or an urgent safety need. An urgent safety need pretty much means that there's been an injury or a fatality that triggers eligibility. And the timely opportunity, the best example we have of that was like when the fires happened in Southern Oregon, we were able to fund a project, like it was something that could not have been planned for. But now that this tragedy has happened, if we had some funding right now to make some improvements, we could do something here. So that's those are the two additional requirements that we have for the rapid response program. Then we have our planning assistance program. Like I said, where we send a consultant to the community to write a safe routes to school plan. It really helps as a part of like application support. We're able to help identify projects, give them a lot of the information that they are going to need in order to apply for the next round of safe routes to school funding. And then we've got our education program where we have community capacity building grants on those three different levels, the beginner level, the intermediate level, and then sort of the expert level, which is where we're just funding innovative ideas. There are also resources available all year round as part of our education program that you don't have to apply for, including Safe Routes to School resource hubs that are in 3 locations that cover all the state. So check out OregonSafeRoutes.org for some more information about things that you can access, resources, materials, goodies you can access all year round, and events that schools can participate in for free, like the Walk and Roll to School Day, International Walk and Roll to School Day, or the newer event, the Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, that highlights civil rights, the civil rights movement. So for the years 25-26, our construction and education programs, our application materials will likely be online starting in January 2024, with applications due in March 24 and then summer of 2024 for the respective programs. There we go. So that's our big picture, big tent. I wanted to come here to see if you have any thoughts that I can bring back to the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, along with Mavis. Mavis will help me too, as they look for recommending their next round of funding. All right, Beth, I'm ready for you. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, I'll just start. I think I can only just describe the situation locally that we're having troubles with. I'm the liaison to my local bike ped group for City of Newport, and the bike ped group has been doing a lot of good studying about Safe Routes to School. And by the way, amazing, great website. I've used your resources as the liaison. Just a really good job. But we find that our city council doesn't know anything about it. You know, that there are kind of 4 types of 4 programs within the program. Our local city council doesn't know about it. So, and I don't think our city manager really, and not our city engineer and our city planner about the construction part of it. Yes, but the rest, no. So I don't know. I think outreach might be more outreach so that the bike ped group doesn't have to do the heavy lifting. And what about all those cities and towns where there's no bike ped group? So I'm just going to present that problem to you, and no solutions like I usually do. So there you go.
Great feedback. That's excellent feedback. Thank you so much, Beth.
Other feedback. Or appreciation. I mean, this is amazing. I just want to acknowledge that this is an amazing program. If all of ODOT operated like this, I think we would all be a lot happier with the outcomes that are being produced at the state level. So kudos. Mavis?
I'm going to harp on the same thing again. I think that you should have more money, and I think that there should be a streamlined way to get that money where it needs to be, because I know that you guys are overtaxed with what they have been giving you. So I don't know how to make it happen, but you need more money and more ability to get it out the door.
Thank you, Mavis. That's like, it's those state funds. They really are hard to find. These, that kind of what Mac was talking about before, the Safe Routes to School program, I think does pretty well because we have those state funds that are.
Yeah, they're the unicorn fund.
Mhm. Thank you. Good feedback.
Emma, may I flag a couple things related to that point? Okay.
Yeah, go for it, Karen.
So we've been at 10 million a year in state Safe Routes to School funds, going up to 15 million a year starting this year. The rest of it has come from federal flexible funds, flexible federal funds. I got to get my words in the right order. What Leanne and team have done is prioritized swapping out state highway funds, state funds, or using state funds to the extent possible to provide those to local agencies. And then we fund ODOT projects with the federally funded projects. So that becomes another example of the ways in which we are doing fund exchange kind of things that then puts an additional tax on the state highway fund. The other thing that I want to flag, and this is something we're trying to do more of, is proactively being ready and sharing information out statewide to the media statewide, so that we can hopefully get great stories across the state in communities, local communities, to build understanding and awareness of the programs and the good that the program is doing. And so some of the like long-term thinking in the back of my head on a napkin is, if we are able to address some of the policy changes to Safe Routes to School in this legislative session, we are due for another look at the transportation package and transportation funding in 2025. So I think those are just a couple of things to put pins in the back of your mind in terms of when might there be opportunities.
Thanks, Karen, for helping us navigate the how behind Mavis's great points. Any last thoughts, or is it time for a brief stretch break before the home stretch? I'm seeing some slightly sleepy faces on the screen. And since we are an active transportation-oriented committee, I'm going to invite you to take the next let's say 3 minutes. We'll have till 3:44. Stand up, move your body a little bit, meet back here at 3:44. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you all.
You're muted, Emma. Emma, you're muted.
Thank you. I will not repeat what you just didn't hear. I'll just move us straight along into the next agenda item. So member roundtable, not an agenda item. Follow-ups and public comment. We didn't have any verbal comments today, but we did have the written comments submitted about the Bike Skyway. Do we have any member updates or agenda requests for our upcoming meeting? Has everyone had a chance to look at the Bike Skyways, or do we want to take a couple minutes to skim through that written response since we received it right before the meeting? A written comment.
I didn't see it.
I saw it and read it and it was awesome. I want one.
You want to pay for it, Mavis?
Pennies at a time. Maybe we can put it in the Rose Corridor project.
Did it get sent to us in an email or what?
No, I just added it. I got it literally right before the meeting started. So I just added it onto the drive, and let me share my screen real quick.
Jessica, have you had a chance to read it? Do you want to just kind of walk us through at a high level?
Yeah, so
if you're not prepared, I understand because you just got it.
yeah, the very short summary, because I have had a couple of the email correspondences with Michael Harris, who is a resident of the Portland metro area, very dedicated, passionate local advocate who has been doing some cabling at various locations in the Portland metro. There's a letter in the packet kind of describing his concept, but because I know Mavis is going to want this, I'm going to go straight to the pictures that he shared of tabling. He's been gathering signatures for a concept that he would like to see ODOT pursue, that is elevated bikeways. So basically a skyway system for bikes, or kind of a bike freeway system that is grade separated from auto traffic. I think it is in line with where we're going with the BUD in terms of trying to get physical separation, but many, many leagues ahead of where we are at in terms of funding and when we're talking about physical separation at this point. So he shared that letter, a couple of photos, has a petition where he has gotten 500 signatures, encouraging ODOT to look at this. But yeah, I will.
Is there a specific location he's wanting it, or just in general everywhere? What's the?
It is that I believe the vision is a network of the system across the Portland metro and state of Oregon, which is my general response to him has been a thank you for your passion and engagement. Here's what our funding scenario looks like, sort of response.
Thank you for that overview. Any committee comments or discussion on this?
I'll jump in on this one because I forgot to give my OTC report, which is the Oregon Transportation Plan, which is getting us ready for the next 25 years of transportation in Oregon. I would love to see the Skyways, but as it is, I suggest everybody go to the exploreotp.com. And there is a thing that I'll walk you through, and you can kind of see the plan, because February 8th, I believe they're coming out with the fine new dandy. They've talked to us, and now this is what they've come up with. And so the response window is getting very narrow. So please take a look at it. And if you got something to say, now's your time. Time to throw in your skylines.
Would you tell us the
went there.
website again? Would you repeat that website?
Jessica, can you put it in? I'll put it. It's in. Emma did it. She's so good. It's in the chat.
It's exploreotp.com, and it's in the chat box right now. I went there and I went through the quiz, and then it looks like there's funding scenarios. I wasn't clear that the OTP was going to be doing funding scenarios. So is what's coming out in February asking for input on the different funding scenarios, and right now it's just sharing those, or what's the next step in the process so that we can prepare to weigh in?
As I understand it, this committee has been doing its thing, and we are coming up on our 8th meeting, I believe, where they have taken all of our input and they are coming out with the finalized documentation stuff. So now it's narrowing into that. I have a problem with this part needs moved. If you have something in there that you're like, oh, Mavis, you got to say something about this, please let me know. I believe it's February 8th is my next meeting on that. And yes, they'll learn everything about in the funding scenarios. That's like, if you take it from here, where does it go? And it gives you a really good, it's a great outreach utensil more than anything, but it will link you into where you can look at really what they're doing. So.
Okay, so there is a way to comment on the funding scenarios, even though Explore OTP is just kind of like, here's info. It looks like an inform, not an input.
That one is
situation.
an inform, not an input, but I am your input. Let me know if there's something on there that you're like, And it will be going to public. It should be going to public. Is that correct, Jessica? Do you know?
I am a little out of the loop on this one because I was engaged in the subject working groups that have wrapped up. But I can loop back and see if there is a draft that's available for review yet, and when that, if there isn't yet, when that will be coming out.
It is imminent.
Thank you. Any other follow-ups, member updates, agenda requests?
I just posted the ODOT page.
Thank you. That moves us into action item recap and March agenda build. So community paths applications update will be on the March agenda. Then we'll have our Q&A opportunity to ask questions and kind of wrap our heads around it at the April meeting. Jessica, I don't know, I haven't looked at the doodle yet. Have we gotten all the responses we needed so that we can finalize the scheduling on the April Oregon Community Paths meeting?
I am just refreshing that right now.
Not seeing Lauren's info in there yet, or okay, we have Andre, May, Del, Aaron, Seth.
Yes, we need Bill and Lauren and Mavis. Could you possibly open up your calendars and look at April 27th for me?
I am to 4 p.m. somewhere in that window.
Because it's a kind of looking like the sweet spot in terms of when we will have the information on the Oregon Community Paths grant applications and scenarios and scoring results to share with the committee, but after the Oregon Transportation Summit wraps up. So right now we're looking at a 9 to 10 a.m. Or anytime in the 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. range for just a 1 hour workshop.
April 27th?
Yep.
Whatever, it'll work.
Okay.
Unless I go skiing.
Then you don't get to tell us where to put the monies, Mavis.
I'll be there.
Thank you.
Bill and Lauren, are you checking your
Works for
calendars
me
now?
too.
What's it looking like?
Works for me.
Yeah, I put mine in anytime.
Oh, great. Thank you. I will work with Alan and the consultant that's supporting him then to get that scheduled so it's on everybody's calendars. Thank you.
Did
Thank
you
you.
did you pick a time, or you're gonna ask them first?
It looks like there's those 4 different times, so I think. Is there a preference, morning or afternoon amongst the group?
Well, 8 o'clock is not my preferred time to start. So that's when my day starts. But otherwise,
I'm with Lauren. I mean, maybe
Okay.
Lauren.
We will probably go with the 3 to 4, if that works for folks. And
Nice.
that's
3 to 4 on
hopefully
the
cutting the
27th
least into
of
people's
April.
birthdays.
Thank you. So we'll also get a Great Streets update. There's been a little delay with that program, but Robert is still serving as our representative, and I was in touch with him. He's ready to give us updates when he has updates to share. The applications are due in February, and we'll be getting more info on that at our next meeting. And then we're going to do an equity follow-up conversation with Erica McAlpin. And I know a number of us have done side conversations. I know during my conversation with her, it led to some follow-up on the pedestrian injury and social equity report and on the climate-friendly equitable communities letter that OBPAC had submitted about the modal data inventory. So I will be having a check-in meeting with her between now and our next meeting on those items that I had raised that kind of related to things our committee has been working on over time. Does anyone want to share any other brief updates about communications with Erica? So you met with her. Anything on your mind you want to share? Okay, we may have met the Zoom brain saturation state of the afternoon. Wonderful to see all of you. Thank you for your time and contributions to this committee. Our big action item between now and March is to do those check-ins with our buddies for the work plan so that we can keep moving along. And thanks to the outreach working group on keeping that moving forward. Really exciting to see progress being made in that realm. Even when things like the holidays and COVID and stuff comes up and gets in the way, we're going to keep at it and persevere. Have a great evening. See everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thanks, Emma.
Welcome. Good night. Bye.